I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Christian Linke, the creator of the Netflix animated series Arcane, as part of our Meet the Experts TV animation panel. First question I wanted to ask you is, how were you able to make this show so easy to follow, even for people like me who have no connection to League of Legends?
We definitely tried to approach the whole story really just as audience members that also would just not come from the established player base, but really would just expect a great story. So that was from the beginning was the goal, and in a way I think we didn't want to translate what video games are into a Hollywood way, but really just wanted to embrace what makes video games special and what makes our IP exactly what it is. So I think at the bottom of it, it was really just some strong characters and strong stories that are relatable. I know that's what everyone's trying to kind of chase, but I think it really is just that. We try to stay away from what we call fight porn, which really just a bunch of action for the sake of it, but really just have these grounded character journeys.
So, how did you develop the very distinctive look of the show's animation? Because it's not just the way that the characters look; it's the way they move is just so beautiful to watch. And I was wondering how you developed that.
Very early on, we kind of had the option to either talk to some established studios or to explore this with a small studio in Paris called Fortiche, which had been friends for a long time. We worked on little music videos together. They always had this really cinematic look, this beautiful approach to kind of blending 3D and 2D. And so, it took us a long time, but we just said, hey, they have this X factor that we really love that feels like it deserves that, that larger lens. And so let's invest in their relationship. Let's help them grow and scale up to something like this. We had to just find a lot of answers in the process, built the teams from the ground up. But I think that's really what made that possible. It's really investing in a small studio that had a strong vision. So really, that's on Fartiche, just having that French magic.
And another part of the show that is such a thing to experience is the score for the show. And I was wondering, how did you approach the score, getting the score done for the show?
Mm-hmm. The music we try to make part of the development process as early as possible, because we developed the project at a video game studio. We do have full-time composers, and so I had asked, like Temple was the first composer to join the project. I'd asked him, hey, would you be interested in working on this? And if so, how early could we start exploring really these themes and these leitmotifs and thematics, instrumentations for all these different characters? So really being able to score the scenes or certain ideas really early on, so we could, in the best cases, animate to the music was the goal. And so that's what we did, for the score section, but also for these these pop songs that we developed. We tried to work with artists and also with our internal writing team to get these songs together as soon as possible, because then they can actually inspire what our animators and our boarders do. And so I think that really paid off. An early investment in music made it a bit easier. And so then from there on, it was about just finding the right artists, for every song, for every moment that serves the story best.
Was there a character that you found it difficult to cast the right voice for? Because the voice acting in the series is excellent, but was there a character that it was proving difficult to find the right voice for?
Yeah, there was quite a few characters that were pretty hard to cast. Not only because we had never done this kind of casting. We've only worked in video games, and so when we started our voice work, everything was pretty difficult. We had never worked with the Screen Actors Guild. We didn't have the contracts in place. We didn't really even know how to do any of this. So for the pilot, I think we had like 2 weeks to cast and record the pilot, which was kind of bananas. But even then, in the next few years, Jinx was a character that was very difficult to cast just because we knew the expectations would be, there'd be a lot of people who would pay very close attention because she's such a beloved character. She has a very unique voice in our game. And so we had to find someone that could do the intimate, very acted, dramatic scenes, but at the same time also sell these big, larger than life moments with Jinx. And you can easily sound a bit too hysterical or a bit too, I don't know, like she's just kind of putting on a dress, for one of the other. And so usually we would be able to find one of the two. And it took us, I think, a total of like 2.5 years to find Ella. And so, when we heard her audition, it just kind of like the pearly gates opened, because it was really just, that dichotomy of those quiet, intimate moments, and those loud, bombastic Jinx moments. She was very, very difficult to find for that reason.
What was the most difficult scene to animate from the first season of the show?
I would say probably the end scene of our third episode, just because, from the beginning, you get the storyboards together and you're going to have these extreme human emotions that will be acted out, where a lot of stuff is happening inside the head of the character constantly. And so for everyone to be on the same page, to inspire the animators to also kind of make their own choices, but at the same time get it, moving in a direction that kind of serves the story purpose of the whole scene. That took a little bit. And I remember also at Fortiche when they were trying to figure out who would animate this, that you really had to assemble like a really strong crew to be able to even do this, because it was just a very complex scene in terms of acting. That one was very, very tough because we just knew how important those moments would be. The voice acting was really strong. Mia and Haley and Jason did such an amazing job. So that one took quite a few rounds because it was just so nuanced and everything had to sit exactly right. But yeah, it was a tough one.
I wanted to ask, we are an awards site, and Arcane was a huge winner at the most recent Annie Awards. I believe it was nominated for how many? It was like 9, and it won every single one of its nominations. What was that? What was that like to be a part of that and to have that kind of thing happen?
I think we're very lucky, that we got the opportunity to explore something like Arcane. I think the animated series format, there's so much amazing talent, but at the same time, we were, I think, one of the first in the West who were able to pursue something that's has a larger scope, that could kind of explore some of the pipelines and the opportunities that you usually only get in features. So, super happy that we won these. I think, it to be honest, it just felt a little bit unfair also because, again, there's a lot of amazing stuff out there, but I think there still is a lot to explore, in that bigger production scale and the format that I'm hoping there'll be more and more in the future, because I think we all want it, so it was awesome. But at the same time, I think, I think it's hopefully just the first step into, just being able to I don't know, just add a little bit of a new color to the scene industry, I hope.
So another thing that we learned a little bit ago is that we will be getting a season 2 of Arcane, and I was wondering what sort of direction do you think we might see a season 2 of this show go in?
We always said to ourselves that our first season should really establish our characters and get them to the point where they are pretty close to, the version of the characters from our game. So we in a way, it's kind of like really truly their origin story. Season 2, we definitely always wanted to take it further, to say, okay, now that we kind of know these characters and they exist in our audience's minds, also where do they go from here? And so the ending of our first season, it definitely turns a lot of things upside down, and it was really, really fun. We're writing the last 2 episodes right now. There's just every character really is becoming a bit of the opposite of who they were in season 1. So, I know it's a lot of vague language, but it's I guess, just more of the same and deeper.
Well, Christian, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to having you join us on our panel in just a little bit.
Thank you very much.
I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Casey Willis, the showrunner of the FX original animated series Archer, as part of our Meet the Experts television animation panel. And the first question I wanted to ask is, we are getting a new season of Archer, and Archer, and now the spy agency is owned by his nemesis from the previous season, Fabian. So, what kind of relationship can we expect to see between Archer and Fabian in the next season?
Pretty adversarial, I think would be the best word to describe it. Archer always kind of has problems with authority, and especially someone who is probably better than him at a lot of things, with being a spy and better dressed perhaps. So he sees him as a threat and as an authority figure. So that's not a great combo for Archer.
One of the most touching things about the previous season was how it ended with not only Mallory, voiced by Jessica Walter, but also Ron Cadillac, voiced by Ron Liebman, her husband, together on the beach to close out that season. Where did the idea come from to have that be the final note of Mallory Archer?
It was such a tough moment for all of us, because we've been doing the show at that time for 12 seasons, and we just have all developed such a close relationship with one another. And when Jessica first passed away, we didn't think about it. We were just kind of dealing with it, and kind of soon when we started to think about it, it became something of in our world, in the Archer world, we wanted to have her still be there, but give her something proper and sweet, and it just kind of all came together. I think we had an idea of her retiring, and then soon we were like, we should put Ron in there as well, and see the two of them happy and doing what they want, especially, and add a little bit of one of the things that Mallory wants to do is, berate a waiter. I thought that was a great little touch too. And I remember we had something that I think was going to hit the right note, because when I described it to a couple of people, they started to cry just over the phone when I was describing it to them. So I was like, okay, I think this is going to be the right thing. I think this is gonna touch on the emotions that we want to touch on, and do it in a hopefully classy way, because if there's one way to describe Jessica Walter, I would say classy, number one. And I just hope we did the right thing and did it well. And I was satisfied with it, so I hope fans were too.
One of the great things about this season is we had two guest stars from the previous season, in Stephen Tobolowsky and Pamela Adlon returning and Pamela Adlon returning in a more permanent role, but also bringing in someone like Eric Andre as well. And I was wondering, what did those guest stars bring to the previous season, or in the case of Tobolowsky and Adlon, the previous season as well?
I just think, well, Stephen's great, and he just was perfectly cast, I think, in that role, and he did everything we wanted, and then also would bring in such extra stuff that we hadn't even predicted. And so it's great to work with actors like that, all of them, Pamela, and Eric Andre, and even Kalon, who does Fabian. They all bring things to the table that you weren't expecting. And I think that's one of the great things working with excellent voiceover talent is, having your ideas of what you think is going to happen, but then being open to all the great things that they're going to bring. And so I think with early on, I had an idea of Sandra having an affair with Steven's character and Robert, and I thought I had another idea that didn't make it into it because the whole time Lana never remembered Sandra from their days in college together, and I had an idea that once Sandra slept with Robert, that Lana would be like, "Oh, now I remember you," but that didn't come to fruition. But I love what they brought. I love, especially Eric. We had an idea a long time ago to bring in another scientist that would be as wacky as Krieger, and man, Eric Andre is so good, and I think a lot of the stuff that we see him in, like Eric Andre show, it seems wild and chaotic, but I have to say, so professional in the booth, like so great, and just came with so much great energy and ideas, and it was really fun to work with him.
It's interesting to take a look at the show, as a whole over 12 and soon to be 13 seasons. And I was curious, just in your opinion, which character do you feel has had the most interesting character arc over the show's decade plus run?
I think that, man, it's so hard because we're working on season 13 right now to not spoil things. But I always talk about Pam and how much I feel like she has grown as a character, but also at her heart has maintained being probably one of the only good-hearted people on the show. Like, she really is a good-natured being, and her soul is pure, I think. And so she's changed throughout the seasons, and we've seen her become a field agent and kick ass in the field, but still, I think she cares about everybody she works with, and she's a good person at heart. So I love that. But I think also coming up, we've got really big changes for other characters as well that we're really excited to explore and really excited for people to see. So hopefully, if we get to do this again next year and we get to talk, I might have a different answer because I think we got some cool stuff coming up.
So as you said, you're working on the show's 13th season right now. It's considering most ideas don't even get a season. It's incredible that the show has been running this long. How long do you feel the show could continue to run for?
I want to go as long as we can, and as long as we have good ideas. And if we're lucky enough to get a 14th season, we have a bunch of ideas lined up that we're really, really excited about as well. So I've told the story before, and I don't want to pound it into the ground, so I'll tell an abbreviated version. But I was lucky enough to meet Matt Groening at a party one time, and it was so cool because he knew what Archer was. And I mean, honestly, without The Simpsons, I don't know if a lot of adult animation would even be around. And so he was so nice, and we talked for a little bit, and he asked me, "What are you guys, on your 6th season?" And I said, "Yeah." And he goes, "Call me when you have 26, which I thought was fantastic. But I mean, we're working on the 13th season. They're halfway there. It would be great. It would be great in 13 more seasons to call him up and be like, "Hello, remember me? We met at a party briefly." But as long as we have good stories to tell and the characters are still evolving and everybody's happy, we'll go as long as we can. And I think FX has already said as much as well in various interviews that they're happy with us and they want to keep making these stories. So I want to go as long as we can.
Well, Casey, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Yeah, looking forward to it. Thank you.
I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Simon Racioppa, the executive producer and showrunner of the Prime Video series The Boys Diabolical, as part of our Meet the Experts panel on television animation. First question I wanted to ask was, what was the process like of getting this incredible group of people to come and write one episode of this animated short?
Yeah, that's a great question, and thanks for having me. Basically, it came about, I was working with Seth Rogen and Evan Goldberg on Invincible, which is another show I do. And after that was sort of in post, we started talking. They wanted to make a show that exists in the Boys universe, but they wanted to make something really fast that could come out in time, sort of as a treat for the fans before season 3 of The Boys launched. And they had this idea of doing sort of an animated anthology series. And we were like, well, who could we get to write these? And they're like, why don't we just go out to people whose work we really admire or we like and ask them and see if they'd be interested in doing an episode of the show. So like essentially getting to make their own short film in the world of The Boys. So it kind of helps when you have, you know, Seth Rogen also making these calls for you. So we just started to make a list. We had a much longer list than we ended up. We only had 8 slots at the end of the day, but we made a list. And we just started calling people up and just being like, hey, we've heard you're a fan of The Boys. Do you want to do an episode with us? You can do whatever you want. We'll help you. It'll be awesome. We won't ask too much of you. And people just started saying yes. And then when we hit 8, we stopped asking.
So were you guys involved in the casting process of each of these, or was that done by just the writer and the director on their own?
No, we were involved in the casting. So the primary team was myself, and Giancarlo Volpe, who was our supervising director over all 8 episodes, and then obviously we had the brain trust, which was Eric Kripke, who's the original showrunner and creator of The Boys, Evan and Seth, and some other EPs from a couple different companies who are working with like Original Films, Kripke Enterprises. Obviously, Sony was one of our big producers. But it was mostly, we would talk to the writer when they came in with their episode, and we had ideas about who we thought we could cast and relationships either I already had or Seth or Evan, other people already had. We just went about it the same way. We made lists. We had a great casting director named Linda LaMontagne, who also does Invincible with me, who came in with great suggestions. And we just sort of started going out and sort of like casting the people we thought would be best for the roles. But the writers did play a role in that, yeah.
Was there any bit of casting that you, because the cast is just absolutely insane. Is there any piece of casting in there that you look at it and you're like, I can't believe we got this person?
Mostly it's Don Cheadle. It's the stuff we made poor Don Cheadle say when he came in for his role, because we were just throwing more sort of ad-lib stuff. We were coming up with the spot to just try and punch up his character and what he was saying a little bit. And he was just like, you want me to say what? Really? Okay, so that was great. So getting him was great. Working with Aquafina, she plays versus herself in her episode, that was really fun. I mean, everybody was amazing. It's a treat, our cast. It was so wonderful hearing these people come in and then lift the words off the page and just sort of like really embody the characters.
How was the animation style of each episode determined?
So in some cases, it was a very early decision. So for example, we have an episode called Laser Babies Day Out, which was written by Seth and Evan and was originally conceived to be a Looney Tunes style homage, right, to those classic Roger Rabbit kind of cartoons. So that we knew the style we wanted that to be from the very, very start. And then our job really was just finding the right people who could execute on that in every single way. Some of the other episodes were like Justin Roiland's episode. Also, we were going to do it in Justin Roiland's style, so we knew that off the top. Some of the others, it was a bit more of a discussion and discovery as we got the scripts in, as we started to think about the episodes and discuss them. So like Boyd in 3D, a little bit more of a storybook kind of, episode. So we wanted that to be, we started talking about like Sylvain Chomet's work on Triplets of Belleville, and The Magician, and sort of that led us to a French production company called Folivari, who helped us do the design for that. So it was an organic process. Some we knew right off the bat, others we discovered along the way.
What has been some of the things that you really enjoy getting to see in this universe done in animation that you weren't, because it's animated, you weren't able to do on the live action series on The Boys. What are some of your favorite things about that?
I think the best thing about it was obviously the main show has a very straight long storyline. It's telling the story of the seven along with some other characters like Butcher's team. We were able to just go into much crazier directions. Basically, we were able to say, like, what would happen if you maybe drank Compound V instead of injecting it? What could that do? What about an older Korean couple who you probably would not see on the regular show? What could be their story with Compound V? And that was Andy Samberg's episode. So it just let us really be free to just blow the doors open on the world and just go off in a whole bunch of directions that you wouldn't get to do when you only have 8 episodes focused around the main characters of a television series.
And were there any specific moments that you look at and you find yourself going, I really like that moment?
I think Andy Samberg's episode, which was directed by Steve Ahn, it's called John and Son He. It's I think a heartbreaking story about love and loss and about how life involves death, and sometimes it's okay to say goodbye. All told in the Boys universe. That one was not originally intended to be a very Korean-centric episode. That was not the way the script originally was written. There wasn't our original conception of that script. When we brought Steve on onto the film, he had some personal connection to that, some family history that sort of helped him connect with that story. And he was asked us very early on, he's like, I'd like to make this couple Korean. I'd like to give it a much more Korean flavor. And I'm not Korean. Andy Samberg's not Korean. Giancarlo Volpe, our supervising director, is not Korean. So we couldn't do that, but we could support him and help him do that as best as we could. And I feel like that episode had such a trajectory and became something so much greater than I even envisioned when I first started working on that with Andy. Like, it was just, that was a beautiful thing. I'm so happy with the way that came out.
Was it Steve's idea to see if Yoon Yoo-jung would be willing to be a part of this?
I think her name came up very early on amongst all of us, because once we started talking to Steve and making the episode Korean, we were like, well, let's get Korean actors. Let's get a Korean studio. We use this Korean animation studio called Studio Animal, I think, for that one. Let's get a Korean composer. Let's try and make it as Korean as possible. So she was one of the names that came up very early on, along with Randall Duck Kim, who we ended up getting. She was amazing. She was great. We got her just before her Oscar win. So we can say we got her before that. I'd seen her in Minari, and I thought she was great. So that was one of the reasons we went after her.
You had these premiere before season 3 of The Boys, which is coming up next month. And has there been talk about doing another batch of these episodes?
Yeah, we're having preliminary conversations. No decision has been made yet, but I have ideas about how we'd like to do more. I think the promise of Diabolical is that it doesn't repeat anything you see on the main show. We have to go somewhere different. The main show does what it does so well and so perfectly. I want to give you a taste of other things, other areas, places you haven't seen, backstories you haven't heard, and make it all new every season. So I want it to be new styles, new stories, new directions, new characters, and sort of push it in that direction.
And also, just one last thing. I mean, if another batch of episodes were greenlit, who would be at the top of your wish list to write one of these episodes?
Oh my God, that's a really tough question. Margaret Atwood. I don't know that. I think that could be amazing. It'd be great to go like really wild card and find someone who's just out there and be like, what's your story? I'd love to go to some like classic literary authors and just see what they could do. Maybe someone who's not traditionally a screenwriter would be great.
All right. Well, Simon, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Great. Thanks so much.
I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Stephen Davis, the co-showrunner of the Apple TV Plus series Central Park, as part of our Meet the Experts television animation panel. The first thing I wanted to ask was, you had a replacement come in for the character of Molly in Emmy Raver-Lampman, and I was wondering, how did she do in terms of getting familiar with the role and taking over the role of Molly?
Yeah, it was really exciting when she came on board, and the first episode she recorded was during the pandemic, and she started with a song in the Sir Brix-a-Lot episode, and it's called "Paint the World." It was the very first time we all heard her voice come out, and it was this is cheesy, but their tears were literally shed. It's such a sweet song, and she just floored us, and we were just, from that moment, just, it felt more than right. And she's been incredible and has found new parts of Mali that we would have never found, and it's been really great working with her for the last, God, it's funny that the whole pandemic marks our experience with recording her for season 2 and now season 3, which I'll try not to talk about, but we're like deep in post on that right now also with her.
Did it take a lot of persuade? So one of the interesting things about this season is that you had some very interesting songwriters come on and write songs for the show, including people like Danny Elfman and
Yes.
Big Boy from Outkast. Did it take a lot of persuasion to get people like that to compose songs for the show, or was it pretty easy to get them in?
I feel like Josh Gad is just has this, he's a witch, or is just charming, and just everybody has come on board. It's been really remarkable. Yeah, the fact that a phone call is made and suddenly Big Boy is co-writing a rap about turtle babies is just, it's made my life very rich and full. But it's been pretty wonderful seeing the people that have come on board. The Danny Elfman and Catherine O'Hara song especially was just like this remarkable reunion that we all recorded from my living room, just sitting there as like telling my children to be quiet as I'm listening to Catherine O'Hara sing this amazing song written by Catherine O'Hara. And it's been really amazing, and we feel pretty dang lucky to have them on our show.
I can imagine that sometimes, when you have a show where you're going to have a certain amount of musical numbers in every episode, that it can be hard to nail down certain songs for certain scenes. And I was wondering, were there any songs this past season that were harder to nail down than others?
That's interesting. I can speak to one in the Shadow episode. Oh my God, my brain is breaking. Well, it was A Moment Forever Ago. And this song was always so beautiful, but the point of view, we realized the last second we were having young Bitsy sing it, but it's a reflective song about looking back in the past. And we realized that didn't make sense for her to be singing it. And so we had the last second, we were like, let's get a male vocalist to sing it as modern day Hank, who was played by Henry Winkler, and we tried to do this very complicated thing where we started with young Henry Winkler voice and got older, and then that didn't work. And we just like kept tinkering until we were like, no, this amazing singer, Gavin Creel, as old Hank during the entire song. And it was like the last second we got it in at the mix. And so that was a little bit of a Hail Mary that I think worked. I think people liked it.
That's what you get when you hire a Tony Award winner.
Exactly. Yeah. That was another fun record where you're just like, you're at a Broadway concert in your living room. Just like, this is amazing.
There are certain, one of the things I love about animation is that you have characters that have specific kinds of dialogue that they say that are just so unique to them. And I was wondering if there was a specific character that you particularly enjoy writing dialogue for, or the other writers enjoy writing dialogue for.
Yeah, it's funny. I think they all have their like gears that we like to find. I've always really liked writing Cole. He's such a sweet, kind-hearted, just kind of gentle but hilarious little boy, and or not little, he's 11 going on 12, and I just always really connected with his youthful spirit. And then we also do scratch dialogue very poorly for if we haven't gotten an actor yet, and Kelvin and I split it up, and Cole's landed on my plate, and so I do a very bad version of Cole. And I don't know, I don't know what it's like to be his character, but I make believe for animation purposes. And yeah, I have a sweet spot for Cole in my heart.
One of the best episodes of this past season was the patriarchy. that saw, Molly coming into her, awkward puberty phase. And I was wondering if you could go into how that came about, how the idea for that episode came about, and what went into putting it together.
Yeah, this is that almost started back pre-pandemic in the office. Lindsay Stoddard came in and pitched a very real story about her going through this. And if you've seen the episode, you'll know her Paige's mother gave her a pad. She went into the ocean with the pad. It filled up, and she described it like she was wearing an ocean diaper. And it just felt like this was a ripe area to tell a mother-daughter story. And Paige wanted to right the wrongs of her mother, but ends up coming on too hard and too aggressive with her own daughter. And so it was kind of a full circle thing for Lindsay processing her own mother-daughter period relationship. So it was and we went all in. It was great. I love that. I love the music in that episode too.
There were so many aspects of the party that were absolutely insane. I was wondering, were there anything where you said to yourself, that might be too over the top?
Oh God, no. And I think with this one, we're like, no holding back. I think all pitches were fair game. I'm trying to think of anything. I don't think anything got cut. I think it's full red, just bloody foods.
So what's been interesting about this show's run is that it premiered, I think, right around the time of the pandemic, and then it just it felt like it was sort of just it was just sort of there. We didn't know what the status was going to be of the show. Could you go into a bit more specifics about how the pandemic affected the production of the show?
Yeah, I'll never forget screening the first episode at our offices. We share an office with the Bob's Burgers offices, and everybody was there, and network is there, and it's like, let's have the premiere in Central Park. This is going to be incredible. And it was just like the best feeling ever. It was like a NASA launch. And then the pandemic happened, and it's like, let's just quietly watch it from home. And then it's just been, I think people, I know as much as you in a lot of ways. We're all home kind of watching and experiencing. People reach out and say nice things online, and I know it's found a home and people have kind of come to it. But I think it's just with animation, the amount of time that it takes to make these episodes. About a year goes into each one, and especially with music, it takes just a very long time. So for us, it's kind of our normal run. It's like the same production schedule as Bob's Burgers, and so it's kind of felt normal as far as like our pipeline goes. So I think to me, it's felt like this is the amount of time it takes. This is how it goes out into the world. But I guess you might be saying to the world, it potentially feels like we did it take a while? Sorry, I'm trying to. I want people to know and love us. We work so hard on it, and Apple's been really supportive and nice. And hopefully, with season 3, it's a very loud, splashy announcement to the world that we are definitely going to be back on the air. I hope in the fall. I think I can say that in the fall.
Will you maybe have the premiere party in Central Park this time? Were you actually? Was that something you guys were actually planning on doing? It's
real. It was said out loud. It was like people were so excited. So I will definitely push for that to happen. I'm gonna promise it. You heard it here first. Start gathering in Central Park and sometime in the fall, and we will have a premiere party there.
I'll book my train ticket as soon as the date is finalized.
Perfect.
Well, Stephen, thank you so much for joining us. And we look forward to seeing you on our panel in just a little bit.
Thanks a lot for having me.
I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I'm speaking with Gabby Capili, who's a Disney animator who is a participant in the Disney Plus show Sketchbook as part of our Meet the Experts panel on television animation. First question I wanted to ask was, I'm guessing for the idea, if you're an animator, to work at Disney has to be like one of the dream jobs. How did you end up working as an animator for Disney?
Oh my gosh, great question. So yeah, it was a dream job. I was part of a Disney family growing up. I was an artist, but also I was part of a family where all the rest of my cousins are nurses or doctors or on the road to become nurses and doctors. I'm the only artist. And so I kind of got it in my head when I was young that okay, if I want to be an artist, I got to be a Disney artist, because that way my Disney family will understand what I do. So how did I do it? It was a long road. It was a lot of work. It's a lot of drawings. There's that saying Eric Goldberg told me, where it's you've got 10,000 bad drawings in you, and you've got to draw them all out. So mostly just working on getting those 10,000 out, and then at the end, hoping you're good enough to make it in, to live a dream.
And did your family like support you in your artistic endeavors?
Yes, I was extremely, extremely lucky. I had a big enough family. I'm number 6 I have a tattoo for number 6 out of 11 kids. I'm directly in the middle. So I had that perfect mix of like, there's so many kids, we can't pay attention to everything that you're doing, but also like, you do pretty okay. So like, whatever it is, your grades are good. We'll get you art books if that's what you want, because you keep your grades up and you're okay on your own. I was lucky, very lucky. I have a very supportive family.
On the show, you in your episode, you draw Cusco from The Emperor's New Groove, and I was wondering what made you choose that character to showcase as in your drawing.
I got the option to choose whoever I wanted, and Cusco is like, that's my main guy. That's it was, I say in the episode that it was the first Disney movie that I saw in theaters. I was pulled out of school to go and watch it with my dad, and it was a very special memory for me. And then also, it's so funny. It's so well acted, and it breaks the fourth wall constantly throughout the entire film, which was something I loved as a kid. There's a part where they're like waxing the floor with a floor buffer, and there's like, even as a kid, I was like, why do they have that? They don't even have running water. What's going on? So it's just a very funny movie, and I relate to the character a lot because he starts out very like self-obsessed and not a really good person, but he learns throughout the course of the story through friendship and the power of friendship that like doing things for other people makes you a better person, which makes you feel better also.
So what made you want to participate in this in this project, Sketchbook? What made you want to be a part of it?
I'm the type of person who I like doing new stuff. So I was asked by Amy Astley, who's a friend of mine, and she asked me if I wanted to, and I didn't know what it was, but I was like, yeah, sure, of course. Why not? And then I remember getting on set and being like, oh, it's this, huh? And like being asked like, oh, you're going to be drawing Cusco, make sure you practice. And then sitting down and seeing this like incredible drawing table and being like, it's a good thing I didn't know, because if I did know, I would have been nervous about this. Just the spirit of adventure, I guess.
And how long did it take to shoot you actually doing the drawing?
Doing the actual drawing, I must have drawn 100 Cuscos that day. It was a lot of Cuscos. The whole day of shooting was 12 hours from 8 in the morning until 8 at night. The actual drawing part was a big portion of the day. I remember being nervous when I sat down and being like, I hope I practiced enough. And then by the end being like, I could draw this in my sleep. I'll be drawing this easily for the rest of my life. It's a long time.
What has been the most rewarding part of participating in this project for you?
Definitely the response from kids. I've been lucky enough to go and do some press events, and they're always teenagers who we lock eyes and I'm like, yes, I was you when I was a teenager. You understand me and I understand you. I see like a friend of mine was coming to press events with me, and they actually said to me like, oh, Gabby, the queer kids are like running up to you, aren't they? And I was like, yes, they are, because that's what I was hoping for. When I was telling my story to the camera, is like, I hope the weird kids who feel a little bit out of place see me and think, oh, she's weird too. And that has definitely happened. So it's been a great time.
Kind of reminds me of when Domi Shi, when she won her Oscar for Bao, and she said, for all the girls that are doing drawings in their sketchbooks at school, you know,
Yeah.
Is that something that you related to as well?
Yes, very much so. Even in Turning Red, when Mei Mei is like drawing anime under the bed, I did that too. Very relatable.
So let me see here. What was your reaction to the rest of the series? What did you find really fascinating about some of the other artists that were on there?
Oh, well, one of the things that really surprised me was that Jin Kim, who draws Captain Hook in Sketchbook, was an animator on Emperor's New Groove. And I didn't know until I was sitting next to him doing an interview with just the two of us. And he just mentioned it so casually. I was like, Jin Kim, you're like one of my heroes. I'm sitting right next to you. You worked on this movie that meant so much to me. And then also just little things that I learned from watching the other episodes. Samantha Vilfort, who drew Mirabelle, is one of my really good friends, and like hearing her story and her like approach to art and how different it is from mine, even though I like worked with her and we're friends. Just watching Eric Goldberg draw at all, I was lucky enough to sit next to him while he did a live draw with an audience, and seeing how he moves his pencil and being like, geez, maybe someday I really hope I can get there too. It's been a lot of fun to see how other artists approach art and how it's all very similar to how I approach art, but it's completely different at the same time.
And I know you drew Cusco for this, and that it was wonderful. But I know what are some of the other Disney characters that you would love to have that type of like time and just talk about the art of drawing character like that?
Oh, great question. My second choice was Mulan. They told me maybe Cusco will be too hard because he's a llama. And I said, what about Mulan? And they said, Mulan's really hard too. You can just go with Cusco. But Mulan was another character that was a big deal for me as a kid. My dad's side of the family is Southeast Asian. And so Mulan was the movie that we'd like, she's cool, she's a warrior, she wears armor, she like cuts all her hair off and pretends to be a boy and deals with like self-doubt throughout the whole film, but also saves China. Like you can have self-doubt and also still save China, still be a hero. I think if you go into any of the Disney movies that I loved growing up, there's always that core message in there. Like Rapunzel is another one that comes to mind. She's very sweet, but she has this strength in her that inspires everybody else around her. She doesn't even know it. And then Tiana, who's like, that's all she does is work hard to the point where it's like kind of becomes a problem. She has to learn to loosen up a little bit. But those were some of the characters that I related to a lot growing up.
Well, Gabby, thank you so much for joining us, and we look forward to seeing you in our panel in just a little bit.
Thank you, Charlie. Thanks for having me.
I'm Charlie Bright of Gold Derby, and today I am hosting the Meet the Experts television animation panel featuring Christian Linke, the creator of Arcane on Netflix, Casey Willis, the showrunner of Archer on FX, Simon Racioppa, the showrunner and EP on The Boys Diabolical, Stephen Davis, the showrunner on Central Park on Apple TV Plus, and Gabby Capili, the participant from Sketchbook on Disney Plus.
Nice work.
I know. So the first question I wanted to, I like asking people in animation, is what was the piece of animation that you saw that made you say, that's what I want to do? And first one I'll go to is Steven.
Yeah, I mean, it was The Simpsons. My brother and I used to put tracing paper. We used to tape it on VHS, pause the TV, put up tracing paper, and learn how to draw the characters from the TV. And also get Sharpie one time on my parents' TV, which was not cool, but I'll get them a new TV, I guess.
Okay, well, I'm a Simpsons fan as well. Yeah. What's your Simpsons episode?
Oh man, which 6,000 my 6,000th episodes? Let's see, D-Bart D. I mean, Monorail. Where to go? Whatever the one is where Milhouse says Lisa looks, or who says Lisa looks like Blossom? They're all
Summer of 4'2".
There we go. Thank you.
And what about you, Casey?
I was always a fan. But I remember my grandparents bought me a book that it was a How to Draw a Mickey Mouse book. I remember it's blue and it's kind of oddly shaped. like a long format book. And so I would draw that all the time. But then I kind of thought it was impossible to be in animation. I just didn't know how to do that. And so I think the first time that I thought, like, as an adult person, that I could do it was seeing some of those early Adult Swim shows. And I was like, oh, these are just people like just doing it. And then unbeknownst to me, one of my friends got a job on C Lab, and he was like, hey, I was living in Japan at the time, and he's like, hey, when you get back from Japan, come be an intern on this show with me. And so I did that, and that's when I started. So it was really just seeing that kind of almost DIY aesthetic of those Adult Swim shows that I was like, oh, I can do this. I can be part of this. That a dream that I had when I was a child that I forgot about, that was rekindled by Adult Swim.
And Gabby, what about you?
I always tell, because I thought for sure it was a scene in Tangled where the horse goes out on a limb and he does the facial acting of a horse, but he's also a policeman. So he's like chasing a criminal. So he's a horse, a cop, afraid of heights, and like a soldier all at the same time. And all of that's in his facial acting. And that was the moment where I was like, oh, somebody on this team is a genius. But thinking about it right now, I just realized, I think I was like 5 years old playing a computer game, like a PC computer game. And in the background of the computer game, there was a TV that you could click and it would run an old Felix the Cat cartoon where a fish, like a little fish, came up, and then a bigger fish ate it, and then a bigger fish ate it, and a bigger fish ate it, in that like old 1920s style, silly rubber hose cartoon thing. And I remember I would just click the TV again and again and just watch these fish eat each other. So I actually think it was that.
And Christian, what about you?
I would say the love for animation started definitely with just growing up with Disney movies. I mean, if I had to pick some that are my favorites, probably, Aladdin, Peter Pan. I mean, I think those shows were amazing. But I think consciously kind of thinking about it as something to express yourself, and must have been when my sister was actually part of a cosplay group for Sailor Moon when I grew up. Must have been like 10 or so, and cosplay wasn't really a thing back then in Germany. But it, what they kind of did with creating a whole culture around their love, for the show, just really changed my perspective, on like what a show can mean and like the culture that's around it, the conventions and like these communities you have there. And so I think that always just made me go much deeper and really, I don't know, there was like this whole community aspect, I think also, especially about animation, that is really wonderful, that really inspired me.
And Simon?
It was mostly, believe it or not, the MTV Liquid television era. Stuff like Aeon Flux, The Max, The Head, and more from a storytelling perspective, because nobody else was making TV like that at the time. Like even there's some weird sci-fi. Like Doctor Who was always a little weird. There was some other odd sci-fi, but that stuff was like crazy, subversive, bizarre. Felt like it was just jumping out of comic books to the screen. Like any other live action stuff at the time was boring, I think, compared to what those guys were doing back then. So that's what attracted me to it, just really from a writing, storytelling perspective, was like, what are these guys get to do this? They're telling these kinds of stories, like nobody else is doing that. So it seemed that if you wanted to tell those kind of stories, that was the medium you had to go into. Certainly then. Streamers, I think, have changed that a little bit now, but back then it was like, that was the coolest, weirdest stuff that was on TV, back then.
So the next thing I want to ask is, there's a lot of, I'm guessing that there are a lot of people that have their own preconceived notions about what it means to work in animation and what it entails. And the thing I'm curious about is, what do you think is the biggest misconception that people might have about animation? And Gabby, I want to go to you first.
Oh, immediately it jumped to my head that people think I animate. I'm a storyboard artist, so I'm not the animator. I'm not the person who makes things appear the way that you see them on screen. I'm the person who plans it. But I think a lot of people don't know that that's a job. I didn't know that was a job until it became my job. So I think that's the biggest one for me. Not everybody is an animator.
And Casey?
Oh, it's different now because of the pandemic and working from home. But when we were all in the studio, I think when we would give tours to people that would be coming in town, the biggest thing was I think everybody has this misconception that it's just wild and crazy at the animation studio, and we're all just like just going nuts all day long. And then they come in there and everybody's got headphones on, everybody's over a Cintiq, and it's so quiet, and they're like, it's like a church in here. Like they didn't expect that. But these people are professionals, and they're just concentrating on what they're doing and working hard. And I think that's the biggest misconception is, I mean, we do have fun. We like to, play around and goof off and joke around. But when it comes to doing their work, everybody's heads down and they're trying to get this stuff done. And I think that's the biggest misconception. And everybody wants to listen to their own tunes or podcasts or whatever. So yeah, I think that's the biggest misconception.
And Christian?
I think I'll have to play off of what Casey said. I think probably most people still just have this idea that, from the what they've seen from, the behind the scenes stuff from Disney is like it's just people drawing panels all day, every day. But there's so many kind of invisible wizards in a production like this. I think in particular storyboarders, I mean, even just, a lot of the simulation teams that we have, cloth sim, hair sim, all that kind of stuff. It's just like, it's such a delicate craft and the thoughtfulness, also in what you see, especially in the boards. And it always kind of pains me to realize that the drawings that sometimes are so amazing, so inspiring, no one will ever see them, and I think it just always breaks my heart. But I think I guess, it really is, there's so many more people involved in the process that people, don't even realize are important steps of the whole pipeline.
And Simon?
I think probably the biggest misconception, I think maybe this is starting to fall, is that animation is a genre and not a format. To me, it's a format. Before, I think for a long time, it was a genre, and the genre was kids' movies. And that was what animation, or kids' movies, kids' cartoons. That was what animation was. And I think nowadays you can find so many different types of stories, so many different types of audiences that animation is made for, that to me, it's a format. So you have a story you want to tell. Is animation the right format for that story? It could be like a hard-boiled detective story set in the 40s. It could be a kid's show. It could be anybody's show here, like an animated, comedy half hour, or it could be an hour-long dramatic series. If it fits the animation format, then you should make it animated. Otherwise, maybe you should make it into something else. But I feel like animation is starting to move from, again, just being accepted as a genre to being like a medium to tell any kind of story in. And I think that makes me happy, that transition. But I think there's still a ton of people, obviously, who think if it's animated, it's for kids. And I don't think that's true anymore, and has been true for a while.
And Stephen?
Yeah, I think kind of feeding off of what Simon was saying, I think something I've heard is just like, especially during the pandemic, is that it's easy. It's like, oh, you get to keep making that. And there's also, I think sometimes, and maybe this comes from that people see animation as something just for kids, where it's not where like creatives want to be. And it's like, for me, it's like, no, you have to be the most creative to be in animation. There's literally nothing. You could stare at, until it's drawn, until it's animated, until there's music, until there's sound effects, score, songs in our case and some other people's case. And like, we'll look at a pupil on the screen and go, that line isn't working. Eye dart left, go back right. Like there is like this amazing, like you have to make it look and feel and sound and become real in front of your very eyes like magic. And it is the opposite of easy. It is creating life on a blank page, and it's wonderful.
And the last question I wanted to ask is, what was the last animated work that you saw that made a deep impression on you? And Simon, I'll go to you first.
Oh, that's putting me in the spot. The last film the one that pops to mind right away, I thought Moana was amazing. I walked into that theater just feeling happy and in love with that movie, and like basically want to write those that crew a fan letter. I just thought it had so much love in it. And I know that's a big studio movie, and there's 100 other, like I think Love, Death and Robots is great. I think everybody's show here is amazing, and more. Arcane is incredible. Archer's being, fantastic from the start. Like everybody here. But yeah, I don't know. Like coming out of Moana, I was like, wow, those guys really, like, when I say those guys, I mean the crew, like they really loved making that movie and took the care and just the workmanship in the smallest scene, like the tiniest scene. You're like, just the character, the motion, the hair, like everything. You're just like, I would love to have that kind of intense craftsmanship on every single frame of that movie. Blew me away.
And Stephen?
Yeah, God, it's funny. Somebody's gonna say some really cool thing that I haven't heard of, but my mind went to Wreck-It Ralph right away. The structure of that, I love the structure of that movie, and I always use it. It doesn't matter if I'm writing something that has to do with that structure. My mind always just goes back to the way that movie is laid out and the setup for all the twists. And it's so clean, and I just always go back to that one.
And Christian?
I'll maybe have two quick mentions. Moana definitely also was a powerful thing to me because it did something very amazing. I think just introduced me to a new culture that I had no idea about the, I guess the Pacific Islander culture, or the Hawaiian culture, and didn't really know anything about it, didn't grow up around it, but just made me want to go there and see more. But maybe more as a craftsman, I did want to mention the anime Your Name. I think there's just something about just story structure where, like even when I'm like around all the people that I talk to, about story, I watch Your Name and I just realized like, man, we are still living in these walls, of structure that I think especially in Asia, there's just so fearless when it comes to structure of story, when it comes to just creativity of story, like it doesn't always have to be, the hero's journey, pattern. I think it was just really incredible to see and just made me want to be more, fearless when it comes to story structure.
And Gabby?
I was going to say something else. And Christian said Your Name, and I was like, oh yeah, okay, we're going here. Your Name is incredible. There's also a movie that I watch all the time that's called Summer Wars, also an anime that the movie, it takes place in summertime in the Japanese countryside, and it's like a family that you're dealing with, but also simultaneously it's taking place in this online world where like people are playing video games together and the conflict is happening there, but it's having real world implications on this Japanese countryside home. And it's funny. It's like, how could you do funny and drama and like the world could explode even like from an internet video game? It's great. So story structure and design wise and just like the ideas behind it, that's one of my favorites of all time.
And Casey?
The thing that came to mind right away when you said the most recent thing was probably Into the Spider-Verse. Just the things they were doing with line weights and just color bleed and everything. I was blown away by it. And then on top of it, it's funny. It's great action sequences. It's just got a ton going for it. And I saw it in the theaters in 3D, which I really don't usually go to see a lot of 3D movies, but that movie in 3D was incredible. And so I was glad to see it in the theaters in 3D. And of course, I watched it at home as well, and it was still just as good. So that one really, of recent things that I've seen, I'm still trying to get over some of the stuff that they did.
Well, Christian, Casey, Simon, Stephen, and Gabby, thank you so much for joining us on this panel. We wish you all the best. And don't forget to go to goldderby.com to make your Emmy predictions. Take care, everyone.
Thank you.
Nice to meet everybody.
Nice to meet y'all.
Thank you.
Bye.